I was 78, barefoot on the sand with my children laughing behind me, when my phone buzzed. A single text froze my blood. "Leave quietly. Don't tell your children. They're planning something." I looked up. Michael's eyes were on me, not with love, but with calculation. Laura whispered to Emily, glancing my way. The waves crashed, the gulls circled low, and for the first time I realized the danger wasn't out at sea. It was right beside me, smiling, calling me Mom. Now, before we dive deeper into this turbulent story, let me pause here. If you're watching this on Twist Stories, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. This is where you'll always find tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and shocking twists. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below. Who knows, the next story might echo your own experiences. My name is Evelyn Carter, and for most of my life, I believed family was everything. After Robert, my husband, passed away, I raised our 3 children almost single-handedly. I poured into them all I had: time, sacrifice, sleepless nights. Michael, the eldest, was supposed to be the protector. Laura, the second, was my thoughtful daughter with a taste for beauty, and Emily, the youngest, was the one I kept closest to my heart, thinking she would remain tender. But grief changes people, and greed consumes them. After Robert's death, I tried desperately to keep our family close. Sunday dinners, birthdays, Christmas mornings, I was there, cooking, giving, forgiving. Yet I could feel the distance growing. Michael buried himself in risky business deals. Laura bathed in luxury, chasing diamonds and perfumes. Emily stopped visiting except when she needed money. Still, I told myself, they're just busy. They'll come around. Because isn't that what mothers do? Excuse, explain, endure? Then one evening it began, with a message. On the hall table, tucked inside my newspaper, I found a note. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The words froze my blood. "Leave quietly. Do not tell your children. They are planning something." At first I thought it must be some cruel prank, but as thunder cracked outside and the shadows shifted across my living room, unease crept in. That night I barely slept, and the next morning, when I looked across the breakfast table, I caught Emily's gaze, sharp, watchful, as though she was measuring every breath I took. Maybe I was just paranoid, I told myself. Widowhood makes the nights long, and age makes the mind suspicious. But my instinct whispered otherwise. I confided in Grace Miller, my housekeeper and the only constant since Robert's funeral. I handed her the note. "Grace, look at this." She frowned, her brows knitting. "Mrs. Carter, this isn't a joke. You need to be careful." Careful? But careful of whom? My own flesh and blood? I pushed the thought away until the night of Laura's birthday dinner. Her condo sparkled with chandeliers and gold accents. Laura was dressed in silk, diamonds at her ears, her laughter too loud, too rehearsed. Michael boasted about some new investment, his tone laced with arrogance. Emily barely touched her food, her eyes darting toward me every few minutes. And then Laura leaned close, her perfume almost suffocating, and said with a smile too sweet, "Mom, have you thought about what happens when you're gone?" The table fell silent. My fork trembled mid-air. "I mean," she continued, still smiling, "the estate, the house, the accounts. You don't want things messy, do you?" Her words cut deeper than she realized. It wasn't the subject. Wills are natural at my age. It was the tone, detached, cold, as if she were dividing furniture, not speaking of her mother's life. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed Michael's old jokes, Emily's watchful eyes, Laura's question, and then Grace came to me. Her face was pale as she held out a small recorder. "Mrs. Carter, you need to hear this." She pressed play. Michael's voice filled the room, low and certain. "Mom won't last the week. Just keep her confused. Once she signs, we're done." My blood ran cold. In that instant, the ground beneath me split open. All the years of sacrifice, the nights I stayed up when they were sick, the 2 jobs I worked after Robert died to keep food on the table, the dreams I buried so theirs could bloom, all of it meant nothing. My own children, my flesh and blood, were plotting my end for money. If you've ever been betrayed by the very ones you'd give your life for, you know the kind of pain that burns without flames. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront them. But another thought took root. If they are capable of this, what else are they capable of? Grace's hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. "We need to be smart," she said. "If you confront them now, you'll lose. But if you play along—" Her words trailed off, leaving the air thick with unspoken fear. I nodded slowly, my heart pounding like a war drum. For the first time in my 78 years, I realized survival wasn't about love anymore. It was about strategy. And that, dear listener, was just the beginning. If you were me, a 78-year-old mother who just discovered her children wanted her dead, what would you do? Confront them in rage, or stay silent and wait for the right moment to turn the tables? The text that had warned me at the beach wouldn't leave my mind. Even as the waves faded and the gulls scattered, its words pulsed in my ears like a hidden drum. Leave quietly. Don't tell your children. They are planning something. Now, days later, I was still in my own home but felt like an intruder. Every corridor smelled of Robert's cologne and my lavender candles, but the warmth was gone. The walls whispered betrayal. From the outside, my children's sudden visits must have looked like devotion, dutiful kids spending time with their aging mother. But to me, their smiles were masks, their footsteps rehearsed. Like vultures circling, they were closing in. Michael arrived first, always immaculate, always calculating. He placed a glass of red wine in front of me before I could protest. "Mom," his voice was silk over steel, "you've been so tired lately. You should stop worrying about paperwork. Just trust us." He slid a folder across the table, his hand lingering. I opened it. Some kind of authorization. My name at the bottom, a blank space waiting for my shaky signature. I forced a smile. "I'll read it later." His jaw tightened. "It's just a formality, Mom. Don't overthink." But I did. I always did. That night, as Grace cleared the dishes, her voice was a whisper. "Don't drink the wine, Mrs. Carter. I saw Laura add something before dinner." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Little white powder, dissolved fast. I didn't want to believe it." My hands trembled. A bitter aftertaste still lingered on my tongue. Was this how they planned to do it? Slowly, quietly, until I signed everything away? If you've ever been gaslighted by your own family, you'll know. Reality itself starts to slip like wet sand. Laura's visits were different. She arrived with silk scarves, perfumes, and soft words. "You should wear this, Mom," she cooed, draping the fabric across my shoulders. "So elegant, you deserve it." But her eyes weren't on me. They lingered on the cabinet where I kept the deeds to the house. And Emily, my sweet Emily. She used to braid my hair as a girl. Now she barely looked at me. One evening, I found her in the study rifling through drawers. She laughed it off. "Oh, Mom, I was just looking for stamps." But her hands shook as she shut the drawer. The house I had built on love now hummed with lies. One sleepless night, I wandered the hallways and heard voices drifting from the kitchen. Michael and Laura. "She's weaker every day," Michael muttered. Laura's voice was sharper. "She needs to sign before the week's out. Vince won't wait." My blood ran cold at that name. Vincent Romano. Everyone in Chicago whispered about him, a ruthless lone shark. So that was it. My children weren't only greedy, they were desperate. The next morning, Grace confirmed it. "They owe him, Mrs. Carter, nearly $400,000. If they don't pay—" She hesitated. "He'll collect another way." I sank into the chair. My babies, entangled with a man like Vince, and their solution was my death? Tears welled, but anger burned hotter. They would sell their mother for debt? Grace's eyes glistened. People do worse for less. Cliffhanger beat. Quick flash of Emily's watchful eyes, Michael's clenched jaw. A few nights later, at Laura's chandeliered condo, the pressure turned suffocating. She raised her glass, diamonds glittering. "To family," she toasted. Michael clinked his glass. Emily stared at me, and I, trembling, lifted mine, untouched. Michael leaned close, his voice low enough for only me to hear. "Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I swallowed hard. "Harder for whom, Michael?" His eyes gleamed. "For you." The words sliced the air. If you've ever been cornered by your own kin, you'll know the dread. Like walls pressing in, like a trap you can't see. They began rehearsing my absence before I was even gone. Laura dropped hints about redecorating the house. Emily mentioned a future trip, using funds that weren't yet theirs. Michael boasted about new ventures financed by an inheritance still warm in my veins. Each word was a blade. And then came the detail that froze my soul. Grace returned from the market pale as chalk. "Mrs. Carter." Emily asked the funeral director about expedited cremation. The air left my lungs. Cremation. Quick, final, no body to examine. No questions, just ashes. I staggered into the living room, clutching the armrest. My children weren't planning for someday. They were planning for soon. Mini cliffhanger. Camera lingers on Evelyn's trembling hands, cut to Emily's shadow in the hallway. That night, as the grandfather clock struck midnight, I sat alone in Robert's old chair, my hands folded tight, nails digging into my palms. How had we come to this? I remembered birthdays with balloons taped to the kitchen wall, Laura twirling in her little pink dress, Michael begging for one more story, Emily asleep on my chest. Had all of that meant nothing? Tears blurred my vision, yet beneath the grief, something else stirred. Resolve. The next morning, I met Grace in the garden. The roses Robert had planted were in bloom, defiantly alive against harsh winds. Sunlight cut through their petals like stained glass. I touched one and whispered, "They think I'm weak, but I won't die quietly." Grace squeezed my hand. "Then let's make a plan." Her voice steadied me. For the first time, I realized I wasn't alone. Still, I had to play my role. So when Michael brought another folder, I smiled faintly. "Of course, dear. Leave it on the desk." When Laura commented on how tired I looked, I agreed softly. Yes, maybe too tired. And when Emily watched me with those calculating eyes, I met her stare. For the briefest second, her lips twitched. Fear or guilt, I couldn't tell. But inside, I was no longer the prey. I was waiting, watching, gathering strength. And if they thought their mother would fall without a fight, they were about to learn what 78 years of sacrifice can turn into when cornered. Tell me, if you were in my place, if your children plotted your end for money, would you confront them? Or would you wait, silent, and set the trap yourself? The text from the beach haunted me like a tide that never receded. Leave quietly, don't tell your children. They are planning something. Every morning I woke to that line. Every night the house echoed with its warning. Betrayal weighs heaviest in silence. Yet beneath the fear, something else stirred. Quiet, determined, unstoppable. I began watching more, speaking less, waiting for the note that would crack it open. Grace was my anchor. One rainy evening after the children had left, she slipped into my room with a face pale as paper. She pressed a recorder into my hand. Laura's voice came first, clipped and cold. "The papers aren't enough. We can't risk her talking to a lawyer. If it takes something stronger, then so be it." Then Michael. "Stop hesitating. The faster she's gone, the faster we're free." The words struck like a fist. I swayed, but Grace steadied me. "You have proof now. You're not powerless anymore." That line, "not powerless," changed everything. The next day, Detective Mark Sullivan stepped into my living room, tall, weathered, eyes marked by too many broken families. He listened to the recording in silence, hands folded. When the tape ended, he spoke evenly. "They're serious, but we need them to incriminate themselves, directly, undeniably." My stomach twisted. "You want me to go back, pretend nothing's wrong?" He nodded. "Yes, but wired. A microphone small enough they won't notice. We'll be close. The moment they cross the line, we move." That night, I sat in Robert's old chair, whispering into the dark, "Robert, give me strength. I'm walking back into the wolf's den." Michael's house was built to impress but designed to chill. Marble floors, glass walls, reflections of people pretending. I slid the microphone into my blouse and stepped inside. They greeted me with masks of affection. Michael's handshake too firm, Laura's perfume chokingly sweet, Emily hovering near the kitchen, restless. Dinner began with forced laughter, clinking cutlery, wine poured too smoothly. The air stretched taut. Then Laura spoke. "We can't keep delaying. Vince wants his money. He won't wait." Michael's gaze flicked at me, then away. "She'll sign tonight." My throat tightened. "Sign what?" He slid a folder across the table. My name on fraudulent transfers, a pen gleaming beside it. Emily's voice cracked. Maybe we should wait. She doesn't look well." Laura's glare slashed the air. "Don't go soft, Emily. You know what's at stake." For a flicker, shame crossed Emily's face. Doubt. Fragile, but real. I set the pen down. My voice was low. "You want everything I built. The house, the savings, the life your father and I worked for. Tell me, when did I stop being your mother and become just a paycheck?" The table froze. Michael's jaw clenched. Laura's smile vanished. Emily's fingers twisted the napkin. Michael leaned in, voice like steel. "Don't play games, Mom. If you don't make this easy, we'll make it fast." Then Laura reached into her purse. With chilling casualness, she set a small vial on the table. The glass caught the chandelier's light. "Brazepam," she said flatly. "A few drops in her wine, no more delays." My stomach lurched. My daughter, the same child who once braided my hair, offering poison like dessert. Emily's eyes brimmed. "This isn't right. She's our mother." Laura's tone was icy. "She's our problem." Michael slammed his palm on the table, silverware rattling. "Enough. Tonight it ends." The room crackled with menace. I gripped the armrest until my knuckles whitened, forcing my voice steady. "If you do this, you'll lose more than money. You'll lose your souls." The silence was suffocating. Then Michael leaned in, hiss hot against my ear. "Souls don't pay debts." The microphone against my chest caught every word. The threats, the vial, the plan. Sullivan would hear it all. Driving home, I felt a strange calm. The trap had worked. Grace met me at the door, hugging me so tightly it felt like armor. "You did it," she whispered. "They exposed themselves." But the danger was far from over. Cornered animals lash out. That night, lying awake, I replayed Emily's trembling protest. Maybe there was still a seed of conscience in her, or maybe fear of Vince would bury it deeper. Either way, I had proof. I had Sullivan, and I had children who had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The turning point had come. I was no longer the frail widow waiting for fate. I was a woman with evidence, with allies, with a plan. But as every survivor learns, the moment before victory is the most dangerous. So tell me, if you were in my place, with documents on the table, poison in reach, and your children's betrayal caught on tape, Would you trust the flicker of hesitation in the youngest, or would you steel yourself, ready for the final blow from any of them? The night of reckoning came faster than I expected. Michael called me on a Thursday, his tone smooth but edged with steel. "Mom, dinner at my place again. Don't be late. There are things we need to finalize." Finalize. The word hit me like a coffin lid slamming shut. As I gathered my coat, Grace stood in the doorway, eyes wide but steady. "Remember," she whispered, "Sullivan's team will be nearby. You just need to keep them talking long enough." I touched her hand. "If this is the end, Grace, thank you for being the daughter I never had." Tears brimmed in her eyes. "No, Mrs. Carter. Tonight isn't the end. Tonight is your beginning." Michael's house loomed like a mausoleum, cold stone under silver moonlight. The moment I stepped inside, a chill coiled down my spine. Laura's eyes gleamed with calculation. Emily looked pale, torn, her fingers twisting nervously. Michael stood tall, wearing a mask of calm so perfect it was almost grotesque. Dinner was nothing but theater, plates untouched, glasses of wine sweating on the table. The real feast was about to begin, and I was the main course. Michael finally leaned forward. His voice was sharp, final. "It's time, Mom. Sign the documents. Tonight." He slid the papers across the polished wood. My hands shook as I opened them. Forged signatures, transfers, neat, merciless lines. I looked at my children, the same faces I had once kissed goodnight, and whispered, "Is this what family means to you now? My death for your survival?" Laura scoffed, her diamonds flashing. "Spare us the drama. Just sign." Emily's lips trembled. "We don't have to do this." Michael cut her off with a glare sharp enough to slice glass. "Quiet, Emily. We've come too far." Mini cliffhanger. Emily's silence hung in the air like a question no one dared answer. Then Laura reached into her purse. With a flick of her manicured fingers, she placed the small vial on the table, Brazepam, and rolled it toward me like an appetizer. "Drink, sign, sleep," she said coldly. "It'll be easier that way." The chandelier light caught the glass. My heart thundered, but beneath the terror, defiance burned bright. I straightened in my chair. This house, this estate, this legacy, and it's mine, and tonight it stays mine. Laura's laugh was harsh, metallic. "You don't get to decide that." Before I could blink, Michael lunged across the table. He snatched the pen and grabbed my hand, forcing it toward the document. And then, "Chicago PD, hands where we can see them." The front door burst open. Officers flooded in, boots thundering across marble. Detective Sullivan strode in behind them, his voice steady and commanding. Michael froze mid-motion, the pen trembling inches from my fingers. Laura's face drained of color. Emily gasped, clutching her chest. The officers swarmed. Michael's arm was yanked back, the pen clattering to the floor. Laura stumbled, her wrists locked in steel. Emily stood paralyzed, tears glistening. Sullivan's voice cut through the chaos. "We heard everything, every threat, every word. It's over." Michael snarled, thrashing like a cornered animal. "You set us up, old woman." I rose slowly. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with power. For the first time in years, I wasn't prey. I looked him in the eye. "No, Michael, you set yourself up the moment you chose greed over family." Laura's mask shattered. She screamed, mascara streaking her face. "We had no choice. Vince would have killed us." Her words spilled like poison. Sullivan's brow furrowed. "Who's Vince?" Michael spat. "Vincent Romano. He's the one who—" But before he could finish, the officers dragged him back. The name lingered in the air like smoke, promising more shadows ahead. Mini cliffhanger. Sullivan's sharp look suggested this was far from over. Then came the sound that pierced deeper than any scream. Emily sobbing. "I didn't want this, Mom, I swear, they made me. Vince said, If you didn't die, we would." Her words twisted the knife of betrayal into sorrow. For a heartbeat, I saw my little girl again, lost and frightened. But truth is truth. She had stood by, silent while her siblings plotted my end. I steadied my breath. "Emily, you had a choice. Silence is still betrayal." Her sobs echoed as the cuffs closed around her wrists. The moment of justice felt unreal. Years of sacrifice, decades of love, all undone in a single night. And yet, as I stood there, watching my children led away, I felt not triumph, but grief, raw and relentless. Sullivan placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're alive, Mrs. Carter, because you fought. Don't forget that." His words landed heavy, but true. As the officers guided my children out, Michael turned one last time, venom spilling from his mouth. "You're no mother to me anymore." I met his eyes without flinching. "You were my son until the day you decided to kill me. After that, you became a stranger." The silence that followed was absolute. Grace appeared in the doorway, her hands trembling, tears streaming. She rushed to me, wrapping me in an embrace that nearly broke me. "You did it," she whispered. "You're safe now." Safe. The word felt foreign, almost bitter. Could anyone feel safe after discovering their children wanted them dead? But I held her close, because in that moment one truth cut through everything else. Family isn't blood. Family is loyalty. It's love. It's sacrifice. And Grace had given me more of that than my own flesh and blood ever had. The media later called it the Carter conspiracy. Reporters swarmed. Headlines screamed betrayal. Neighbors whispered. None of it mattered. What mattered was simple. I survived. Not just survived, I won. Now I ask you, dear listener, if you were standing in that room as justice crashed through the door, would you have felt relief or only sorrow? Because sometimes victory and loss arrive hand in hand. The days after the arrests passed in a haze. The house that had once echoed with betrayal now felt unbearably quiet. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for footsteps at the door, voices plotting behind walls, or poisoned wine in my glass. But silence can be its own kind of torment. Every corner of the house held memories of my children. Michael chasing Laura through the hall, Emily laughing as she hid behind the curtains. Those ghosts clung to me, whispering, "What went wrong?" The trial was swift. The recordings, the forged documents, the vial of drugs, all undeniable evidence. Michael's arrogance on tape, Laura's venomous commands, Emily's silence. None of it could be excused. The courtroom was heavy with tension. I sat at the front, Grace by my side, her hand steadying mine. My children avoided my eyes as the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, attempted poisoning. Michael sneered. Laura wept. Emily looked hollow, like a shell of the daughter I once knew. When the judge asked if I wished to make a statement, I rose slowly, leaning on the cane that had seen me through darker nights. "I raised 3 children with love," I said, voice trembling but strong. "I sacrificed, I endured, I believed. But love without respect is not family. Blood without loyalty is not family. Tonight, justice is not victory, it is survival." The room was silent. Some jurors wiped tears. I sat down, heart pounding, knowing those words were not just for them. They were for me. Afterward, I made a decision. The estate remained mine. Every penny, every brick of the house my husband and I had built. But wealth meant nothing if it ended with bitterness. So I created something new, a foundation in Robert's name, dedicated to supporting widows, caregivers, and women abandoned in old age. I called it the Carter Rose Fund, because roses bloom even in harsh winds, and sometimes survival itself is defiance. Grace became the first trustee. Her daughter, Valerie, was the first scholarship recipient. In their loyalty, I found a family reborn. Yet, healing was not simple. At night, I still woke to nightmares of Michael's hissed threats, Laura's cold stare, Emily's trembling silence. Betrayal doesn't vanish with a gavel's strike. It lingers, festers, then slowly, if you allow it, it transforms. I began to journal. Each page was a wound opened, then stitched with words. Writing became my way of bleeding without dying. One entry read, "They wanted me to be ashes. Instead, I planted seeds." Neighbors sometimes asked, "Do you regret turning them in?" I always answered the same. I regret what they chose, but I don't regret choosing life. Because survival is not betrayal. Survival is honor. To yourself, to the love you once gave, to the life you still carry. One evening, Grace and I sat in the garden. Valerie chased butterflies among Robert's roses, her laughter ringing like a melody I thought I'd lost. Grace said softly, "You gave her a future, Mrs. Carter. That's what family should be." I watched the child twirl, her joy untainted by greed. My chest ached, but in a softer way. "Yes," I whispered, "that's family." If you've ever been betrayed by those closest to you, you know the temptation of bitterness, to close your heart, to let betrayal harden into stone. But I learned something. If you do that, they win twice, once by hurting you and again by killing the love left in you. So I chose differently. I chose to grieve, but not to wither, to mourn, but not to surrender, to let the ashes of betrayal feed the soil for something new. 1 year later, on the anniversary of Robert's passing, I returned to the shore of Lake Michigan. The gulls circled overhead, diving for scraps just as they had the day I first suspected betrayal. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I scattered rose petals into the waves, watching them drift, crimson against the water. "Robert," I whispered, "the house is safe. Our legacy is safe. And though our children lost their way, I will not lose mine." The wind carried the words away, and with them, a piece of the heaviness in my chest. To you, listening now, maybe you've felt something similar. Maybe you've known the sting of being overlooked, used, or betrayed by your own. If so, hear me. You are not alone. Family is not always the blood in your veins. Sometimes it's the hands that lift you when you fall, the voices that believe you when the world doubts, the hearts that choose you when others abandon. Tonight, as I close this chapter, I leave you with one truth that cost me everything to learn. Respect isn't given by blood. It's earned through love and kindness. Now I turn to you. If you were betrayed by the very ones you raised, would you choose revenge or would you choose survival? Have you ever witnessed injustice in your family that left you speechless? Share your story below. Here, no one carries their pain alone. And if this tale touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Twist Stories for more sagas of sacrifice, betrayal, and justice. Because every story here is a reminder. Justice may be delayed, but it will never be denied.